Donald Trump did not sneak chaos into global politics. He marched it onto the main stage, handed it a microphone, live streamed it, and called it leadership. What once passed quietly through back channels now explodes in public. Threats, reversals, praise, punishment, all colliding at once. Allies squint, rivals pause, markets flinch. The old assumptions, predictability, restraint, continuity evaporate. Is this madness by design or impulse turned into doctrine? Is Trump deliberately practicing the madman theory, or is he simply being Trump with the volume turned up to superpower levels? When chaos becomes strategy, how do adversaries distinguish bluff from intent? When noise becomes leverage, who pays the price? Has unpredictability become a legitimate tool of power, or is it simply power without responsibility, tearing at the last threads of global order? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. There is a temptation to laugh it off, to treat Trump's volatility as threat, ego, spectacle. But step back and the picture darkens. Positions shift, threats appear, vanish, then return sharpened. Allies are embraced one day and humiliated the next. Trump has taken unpredictability, once a liability for any head of state, and weaponized it. In a world built on signals, he floods the system with noise. Over time, that noise hardens into leverage for him and chaos for everyone else. So is this just instinct run wild, or a cold calculation meant to keep the world permanently off balance? Political science has a name for this behavior, the madman theory. The logic is simple and terrifying. If a leader appears volatile enough, adversaries hesitate. Escalation becomes risky. Rational planning breaks down. Fear does the work diplomacy once did. The theory gained prominence during Cold War, most famously under Richard Nixon. Nixon wanted enemies to believe he might go too far, but his performance of instability was controlled, discreet, filtered through aids and signals. The madness was never meant to be visible to everyone. It was a shadow, not a spotlight. Trump flipped that script. His madness, real or performed, is loud, impulsive, and public. It unfolds on social media. It detonates in off-the-cuff remarks. It leaves diplomats scrambling to decode intent in real time. There are no filters, no soft landings, no quiet reassurances. What Nixon whispered, Trump shouts. What others hinted, Trump threatens outright. And because he sometimes follows through on tariffs, withdrawals, funding cuts, the threat never feels empty. The world cannot assume that Trump is bluffing, and that uncertainty is the point. History offers precedents. Nikita Khrushchev banged his shoe at the United Nations. Saddam Hussein cultivated ambiguity around weapons. Kim Jong-un pairs missile launches with sudden charm offensives. Leaders across eras have ruled by keeping others off balance. Trump belongs to the small and unsettling league, but he is its most visible modern practitioner. A madman not behind closed doors, but in full public view. And yet, this is not just a story about one man. It is a story about what his behavior exposes. For decades, global order rested on shared expectations. Treaties mattered, alliances held, norms restrained impulses, institutions absorbed shocks. We were told the worst chapters of global politics were behind us. Borders more or less settled. Power had limits. The system was imperfect but stable. Trump did not invent the erosion of this belief, but he ripped the curtain down. He showed how thin the guarantees really were, how much depended not on rules but on restraint. As Antonio Gramsci warned, the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interregnum, morbid symptoms appear. Trump's presidency feels like one of those symptoms, not an aberration but a revelation. The madness does not break the system, it exposes it. Watching Trumpism unfold, it becomes harder to pretend the old order was solid. It was brittle, it was conditional, and it relied far more on good faith than anyone admitted. In Davos, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney put words to the discomfort. Quoting Václav Havel, he said the world had been living within a lie that history could be controlled, that institutions could regulate human folly, that rules alone could outgrow madness. Trump did not create this lie, but he shattered it in public with force and without apology.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true.
Nowhere is Trump's madman diplomacy clearer than in his use of bluff. He talks like a gambler: cards, stakes, leverage. He frames diplomacy as a game where intimidation replaces trust. When he threatens to take control of the Panama Canal, to acquire Greenland one way or the other, or to walk away from NATO, the problem is not whether the threats are outrageous. The problem is that it is impossible to know which ones he really means. This uncertainty is deliberate, or at least useful. Trump has spent years blurring the line between threat and action. Sometimes he backs down, sometimes he doubles down. Sometimes he does exactly what he promised. He withdrew from the WHO. He imposed tariffs on China, the EU, Mexico, and Canada. He defunded science. He cut aid. He followed through often enough that disbelief became dangerous. The Oval Office exchange with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky captured this perfectly. Trump spoke in the language of cards and gambling. Zelensky rejected the metaphor. Trump escalated it. He accused Ukraine of gambling with World War III. Days later, the bluff collapsed into reality. US military support was withdrawn. The message to the world was unmistakable. When Trump threatens, assume he might mean it.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
You will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position.
I
You don't
was
have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in the
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What you-
III.
what you
You're
speaking about?
gambling with
What you
World
speaking
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A
This
lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for
What-
the United
what
States
are
of
you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Political scientists warn that verifying Trump's intent is extremely challenging. That is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. For bluffing to work, unpredictability must be credible. Even empty threats can succeed if they intimidate. Nuclear deterrence itself rests on this logic. Mutually assured destruction has prevented war not through trust, but through fear. Trump applies this logic everywhere, not just where it is meant to exist. Where Trump differs from previous presidents is not that he bluffs. All administrations have done that. It is that he uses the madman strategy on allies as aggressively as on adversaries. Europe is threatened with abandonment. NATO is treated as conditional. Defense becomes transactional. Loyalty is priced. The uncertainty is not accidental, it is leverage. This leaves allies in an impossible position. Prepare for abandonment and risk provoking it, or trust in commitments that may evaporate overnight. For decades, research suggested adversaries believed the US stood behind its threats, especially within NATO. Trump injects doubt into that assumption. That madness is no longer reserved for enemies. It is turned inward, aimed at partners. Trump may be playing a multidimensional mind game, or he may simply be acting on impulse and discovering that chaos works. Even scholars struggle to tell the difference. Is he deliberately employing the madman theory or just being himself? The answer may not matter. Outcomes matter more than intent, and the outcomes are destabilizing. Trump is aware of his reputation. He treats it as an asset. As long as he follows through some of the time, the madness holds. Back down too often, and the spell breaks. Follow through occasionally, and fear does the rest. That is his gamble, and it forces everyone else to play along. But this style of leadership comes at a cost. Democratic erosion accelerates when chaos replaces norms. Executive overreach thrives when unpredictability keeps institutions reactive. Courts are defied. Oversight is weakened. Dissent is chilled. Fear becomes a governing tool. The logic of madman diplomacy does not stay at the border. It seeps inward. Economic consequences follow. Tariffs become weapons. Markets swing. Allies retaliate. Growth slows. Inflation rises. Short-term wins mask long-term damage. Chaos creates movement but not direction. It shocks systems into action but rarely into stability. Foreign policy becomes transactional to the extreme. Aid is conditional. Alliances are renegotiated publicly. Soft power erodes. Trust drains away. Spaces open up for others to step in. What Trump calls strength often looks from the outside like volatility without a safety net. And yet, the world does not collapse. It adapts painfully, slowly. Middle powers look for guardrails. Multilateralism mutates. New webs of cooperation form, not out of idealism but survival. As Carney warned, Those not at the table risk being gobbled up by power-hungry hegemons. This transition is unsettling because it strips away illusions. The old order promised predictability. The new one offers none. Chaos is no longer a breakdown of rules, it is a substitute for them. And that may be the most dangerous shift of all. So is Trump practicing the Madman theory deliberately, or is unpredictability simply instinct elevated to doctrine? The evidence points both ways. His behavior fits the theory, his impulses fuel it. The ambiguity sustains it, and that ambiguity is precisely what makes his diplomacy so destabilizing. When chaos becomes a strategy, adversaries hesitate, allies recalibrate, institutions strain. The line between bluff and intent dissolves, and the world is left guessing, not just about Trump, but about the system itself. Perhaps this is not the collapse of the global order, but it is exposure. The revelation that stability was always conditional, the rules were always fragile, that power, when unrestrained, defaults to unpredictability. Treaties begin to look optional, alliances feel negotiable, norms lose their weight. Leader-driven diplomacy replaces institutional continuity. The question is no longer whether chaos works. It clearly does. The question is whether a world governed by fear, noise, and bluff can sustain anything beyond the next threat. Trump's madman diplomacy forces a reckoning, not just with him, but with the myths we told ourselves about order, restraint, and progress. The madness did not arrive from nowhere. It was invited by complacency. And as the world stumbles through this interregnum, one truth becomes unavoidable. Chaos may be powerful, but it is never free. It always sends the bill somewhere else. Thank you for watching Statecraft.